Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us for the second of 4 calls where we will discuss tools and tips to help you become more confident traders. This week, we are discussing homework. We're so grateful to everyone who's been attending these calls and are equally grateful to all of you who are watching the replays. Your feedback has been wonderful, and as long as you're receiving value, we'll continue to put out more content for you. So let's get started. Good evening, friends. There's a few of us here so far. Thank you for being on time. And we'll look forward to seeing who else joins us this evening. Thank you for joining us for the second session with Amy and Leah.
Hello, everybody.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hi, Maggie. Good. It's nice that you could join us.
Yeah, trying. I really enjoyed your two previous ones that I listened to on the replay.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Hey, Lee and Amy.
Hi there.
You guys got all done up. How cold is it out there right now?
Oh, you know what? It's not actually that cold today. I'm just not feeling great. So I'm staying warm. I think it might be right around 0 today. So no.
Were you guys watching the game today? The World Cup, Canada?
Are you asking me
No.
to admit on recording that I'm not a sports fan?
Oh.
Because if you are, then the secret's out, much to my husband's dismay.
18 people with us already. This is exciting. Thank you guys for spending another hour with us tonight. Hope that we can share some more value, and love your participation and your feedback and anything that we can do to maybe bring about future sessions. We'd love your guys' input.
Yes, and so today the topic of discussion is homework. So we're going to pull up a poll for you guys to complete in just a minute here with a few options, and then we'll try and get through as many options as we can in our time that we've got. But we'll really just start with whoever the most interest is in us focusing for tonight.
And so in addition to this, we've been considering the link that we shared last week. A lot of people gave feedback that it was a really good resource, and they were really happy to have access to different templates and different calculators. And so we are expanding on that folder and including in it other resources and documents and things that you might find helpful to you. So we'll reshare the link to that while we're on tonight. And we'll share it again at the end as well. But if there's anything that you guys are looking for, please, we want this to be as interactive as possible so that everybody gets as much out of it as is useful to you.
And I just dropped that new link in the chat. And so we'll just keep adding stuff over the next few weeks. Any resource materials that we come across or that we talk about, we will drop them in the shared folder. So everybody will have viewer access, and then anything that you would like to save or make a personalized copy of, you can just make a copy of that and share it to your personal drive or your personal computer.
Excellent.
It's under resource materials. It used to be under templates, right?
Yeah, so there's a templates folder within the resource materials, and we're just going to add more links in there. But if we've got enough things to kind of group them, then we'll make subfolders just to keep it a little bit cleaner.
Excellent.
So I think we probably, oh, sorry, go ahead, Leah.
I was just going to say, I think we're a few minutes in and we can probably get started. I think we'll start with a really brief introduction for anybody who is new to us this week and didn't get to join us last week. And then also anyone who is viewing this strictly on a replay, if you weren't able to join us in person. So last week that got cut off. So my name is Leah Stark, and I have been learning to trade for a little over 2.5 years now. I have been trading exclusively with the Boss Candle strategy for the last 11 months. And I'm really excited to be able to give back a little bit and share knowledge or ideas and really help to facilitate a community environment, because that's been so beneficial to me in my journey. And so that's kind of why I wanted to participate in these sessions with Amy. Over to Amy.
Amy K. I've been trading, my story is pretty similar to Lisa's, for around 2 years. And then since about January of this year, really focusing on Teresa's boss candle strategy and working to eliminate that shiny object syndrome that I struggled with for the first year of my trading. I'm not feeling 100%, so I'm probably going to turn off my video and need to periodically mute myself. But I will be doing my best to answer any questions in the chat and staying on top of things as well. So anybody who is comfortable, like, feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions or interrupt. And if you want us to elaborate on anything else, the more questions and interaction we have, the more that we can help and kind of go down rabbit holes that maybe we wouldn't have got to. And I can guarantee if one of you are thinking about a question, that there's probably at least one other person on the call also wondering the same thing and maybe just not wanting to put themselves out there and ask. So I thank everybody in advance for your participation, because it also makes it a lot easier for us too.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who participated in the poll that we put out. And it looks like 37% of you are struggling with identifying entries. And then the next highest is identifying divergence with 21% of you. So we'll touch on all of these things, but like Amy mentioned, we just want to be able to bring you guys the most value. So we'll focus a little more on the entries, since that's what the majority of you would like a little bit of assistance with. Amy,
And we
do you
just want to
wanna-
really make sure that everybody understands, like, for homework is not the same as back testing. From my perception, I always avoided homework because I didn't really know what it was. And I was like, oh man, like, I know I'm supposed to be doing something on the charts and marking stuff up, but I don't know specifically what or how. So that's kind of why we asked you guys what are our top picks for things to look at tonight. So identifying entries. We're going to walk you through, like, what would you do to practice identifying entries in TradingView so that you can get your eyes trained to spot the entries sooner. And then once you kind of are trained to spot the entries, you can work also on predicting, like, what are the candle patterns, so that you know in advance, like, if the next candle does A, then this would be my entry. If it does B, then, like, what would be my next potential entry? Kind of how Teresa always talks about these things in the morning of what, if the next candle closes like this, what would we have? So through homework, you can really help your eyes and your mind just identify what are you seeing, and then get really good at predicting what could be coming up as well. So we're not going to be doing a lot of details on using TradingView right now. So hopefully you guys are somewhat familiar. If you're not, I'll also drop a link in the chat to the training sessions that Leah recorded a couple of weeks ago. She did 2 sessions. I think the first one was a little bit more beginner, and then the second one intermediate. So you can go to those recordings on YouTube for that. And in the meantime, Leah's going to screen share with us, or was I going to? Sorry, I think I was actually
you were gonna, because you're gonna mark up.
Screen share US 30, and we'll just go through, like, marking up what does it look like for our entries. So if you guys want to maybe drop in the chat, we'll just see, do we know what all of our entries are for Boss Candle? If we can have you guys list those out, that would be like our first starting point, is really like, what are our entries? And then once we know what they are, how do we identify them? All right, can everybody see my TradingView screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So I have it just opened. I picked a 2-hour time frame from today. So if you are at home on a computer and you want to kind of open up to the same time slot I am at today, and I've got 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time showing on the 1-minute chart. And I'm just going to go through here and I'm going to start marking up all of my entries. Leah's also going to do it on the back side of hers. And I don't know how well it'll work the screen share after. We kind of want to do an experiment to see just for ourselves, like, everybody is going to notice what they know because that's easier for them. So I'm curious to see, like, even just the difference between what does Leah see that I miss, or what might I see that Leah misses. So just looking in the chat, boss candles, delos, engulfing. So Stephanie and Yvonne, like an engulfing boss candle. So just to take that one level further, is we would have like a bearish or a bullish engulfing candle. So we've got engulfing bullish, engulfing bearish, Harami bullish, Harami bearish, master candle, shift candle, T-day shift entry. Excellent, Maggie. Yes. So seems like we kind of are all familiar with what our entries are. I'm going to mark them up here in front of you guys, but if you are at home, like I said, if you want to just follow along on your own screens for a few minutes and mark them up for yourself. But I'm going to go into 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth menu down on the left-hand side of TradingView, and I'm just going to open a call-out box. And then I'm going to go to every candle that I think is an entry, drop my call out box, and then I'm going to type what my entry is. And it seems too easy that this can't literally be homework, but this is literally what homework is finding something that is a weakness, going in and training your eyes to spot that, and just marking it up. And when you mark it up enough times, then you're just going to remember. It's kind of that repetition factor. But now I'm under the gun.
Okay, so I'll chat about some of the questions as you're doing a little markups, and then I'll get back to mine if I can. So I want to go back just a little bit. Tamika, you were asking if we could talk a little bit about back testing. I think we discussed earlier and we realized that there's a huge amount of value in discussing that, but we want to keep the two separate. So I'll just kind of just distinguish, like, what is the difference between back testing and homework? Back testing is when you're going back in time and you may be also doing the same kind of markups, but you're looking for something very specific. So if I wanted to go and I wanted to back test every time there was a evening star, I would go back and scroll through and I would look for every time I can identify an evening star, I would mark it up. I would probably be looking for how far did that go into profit from that entry, what was I noticing about it on the TDI at that time, like all of the little pieces of information related to what that specific entry was and what I'm looking to identify about it. So it's not really the same as homework. Homework, I think, much like what Amy said, I kind of shied away from it at the beginning because I was like, oh, I don't know how to do this. Like I was overwhelmed with TradingView in the very beginning as well. So finding these tools and marking them up was like, I also have a little bit of perfectionism. So I didn't want to, do something wrong and then be critiqued for it and feel dumb or feel like I didn't understand something. But that's what the beauty of this community is that we can all lean on each other, and it isn't like we're not looking silly or dumb for learning something new. We're learning it, and this is how we do it. So backtesting is something that we would love your guys' input on. And if you want to have us do a future session on backtesting on its own, I think it really is something that deserves its own like hour session for it. And so you guys can let us know if you think that would be valuable. Stephanie, I post the recordings in the PipSide group, and also I have created a YouTube channel where we can just kind of collect everything. So anybody who, I think quite a few of you have already subscribed to it, so that anything new I post, you would receive right away. But otherwise we'll share that in the groups. And let me see, don't want to miss anything else. Explain a bit more about EMAs. So Cindy wants to know a little bit more about EMAs. Maybe while Amy's still marking up.
Hey, Leah, sorry, no, the evening star, because I'm sure I've heard somebody say something about 50%.
Okay, so sorry, I misunderstood when it says EMS. So you mean MES? So
Yes,
morning, evening star. That's okay. Don't be sorry. It's great that you unmuted and are participating so that we can get the right questions answered. So an MES is a DLO entry And one of the things that we know about all DeLoreans is that they are a continuation, whereas an evening star or a morning star pattern on their own are reversal patterns. And so identifying it, let me see. Okay, so I can see one there. Actually, Amy just identified it with the morning star call out. It's sort of on the first third of the page.
Yeah.
So it's like one bigger candle with a doji candle, which basically means indecision. So it didn't go up or down. It can have a wick on either side. It can have a wick on only one side, but essentially it's a neutral candle where there's no finite decision made between the bears and the bulls. And then a candle in the opposite direction of that. It's like a little, I consider it like a cup. So a morning star, like, oops, how do I make my hand so you can see it? Like scoops it up to go up like the sun in the morning, and then an evening star scoops it down. So it's like the sun setting at night, an evening star.
Okay,
And
the bullish part of the bullish candle, the third one, does that have to be 50% of the bearish candle size or something? Or did I just hear that wrong and now it's in my brain?
For an MES, I believe it has to be at least 50% of the candle opposite it.
Okay.
And then, or this is where I'm mixed up. So I'd love any feedback. Is it just a morning star or an evening star that has to be 50%, or is it a DeLorean? Because I know certainly one of them must engulf.
It's just the morning and evening star.
Okay, thank you.
Or
Because they're
50%.
reversal pattern. They're reversal patterns, and the DeLorean MES is a continuation pattern.
Is the 50% you're talking about when Teresa talks about where she likes the wick in the middle candle, where like for the morning star, she'd like it in the top half, so the wick's bigger on the bottom, showing or like showing buying pressure. I mean, sorry, because you
Yeah.
want to. I think that might be what she's talking
Okay,
about.
so it's the wick. I thought she was talking about the actual candle body.
Well, she talks about both sometimes, but she quite often will say, "Oh, I like this one, but the wick is, it's a morning star. We're looking for a buy, but the wick is showing selling pressure. I wish it was in a different spot or whatever, right?"
Yeah, so just to elaborate on that, so right here, I've got this marked as an evening star. These are small candles. So we've got a 4-point candle. And when Teresa's talking about the wick, for an evening star, it's a reversal pattern where price was going up and now it's reversing, and we're looking to take a sell off of an evening star. And so you want to have your selling pressure, which would be your wicks at the top. So we can see price came up and it came back down, and then price tried to go up again, and then it closed down here with, this one's like not quite doji, it's a little bit hammerish, but with a 1-point candle. So we want to have a very small candle body or a 0-point candle body in the middle, but the wick you want to have at the top to show that price tried to go up again, but the sellers came in. And then for your third candle in that pattern, this candle needs to close at least 50% of the original candle. So in this case, this isn't the most beautiful example because we've only got a 4-point candle here. And then our candle that we would enter after ate up a lot of the profit back down to the aqua. So you probably wouldn't have taken this one because one, it would be counter trend, wasn't really oversold on the TDI. The M was invalid to be taking a sell, but just for the identifying the candle pattern itself, you want to have your wicks at the top on the candles. And then your third candle that you'd enter after needs to be 50% or more of the first candle.
Okay, so if that first candle is 20, then that third candle can be 10 or more.
Yep, exactly, 10
Okay,
or more. And
fine.
depending on like if they don't all close, like this one was really, they all closed right at the same price. So you might have like a little bit of gaps in there, but you want to make sure that it's closing at 50% of where that candle body is.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And then when Teresa talks about she doesn't like the wick of it, sometimes we'll see these where the wick is on the bottom. So that would show like the price tried to push down and we would have just had like a bearish engulfing candle, but then the buyers came in and brought price back up. So that would be showing that there's buying pressure, and the next candle could actually not want to come back down. So that's where the wick comes into play, because it's just showing you want kind of like a neutral candle in the middle, or a candle that's showing you pressure in your favor.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you also to Mike for sharing a little graphic there of what an MES looks like. So if you guys want to share that or keep it for yourselves, feel free to open it up and
The one on the left is an outside and the one on the right is an inside, just so everybody knows. DeLorean because it's going continuation, Morning Star and Evening Star because it's reversal.
So since you brought it up, let's talk a little bit quickly about what is an inside and what is an outside also. That's something that I think there's a lot of confusion on the call in the morning. And so again, how like Amy said, everybody's eyes see something different. Everybody's version of how they interpret something can be a little bit different as well. So I consider it like maybe here at like 1325-ish. It's not really an example of an MES, but you can see what the EMAs are doing. So for me, I say that like, you know, that in order to have a DeLorean, we have to have a shift, and that sometimes EMAs shift and unshift. Well, in this case, EMAs have shifted and unshift. So the yellow crossed over the red. And so when I'm thinking about if this was a DeLorean, if this was an MES, knowing whether it's an inside or an outside, did the lines stay inside? Like when you're a little kid, if you're coloring, did you color inside the lines or did you color outside the lines? So if the yellow crosses the red, then you colored outside the lines. So it's an outside. And if they stayed inside, then it's an inside. Excuse me one second.
And if
guys,
you're
I'll be right
still
back.
confused, that's totally okay. Because every time I think I just have my head wrapped around it, then I question it again. I'll finish marking these up and then we'll come back to that and I'll see if I can find an example of both on the chart. And so just want to make sure if everybody's following along exactly how easy this is. And if you are trying to focus maybe only on a specific entry, say that you are 100% can identify your engulfing bearish and bullish candles. Once you know something, you don't really need to spend a lot of time reinforcing what's already in your brain. You want to really find like, what are the entries that you struggle with? So for me, Haramis, I struggle with Haramis. And so that's something that I could work on if I wanted to come and do homework on entries. I wouldn't be marking up every single entry. I would be looking specifically for Haramis and then identifying them as bearish or bullish. So I know I marked up one Harami in here, but if you guys were watching on the screen, like it took me probably like 20 seconds to figure out that like this isn't a Harami. So it's like a similar pattern, but I don't actually think it's a Harami, but that's where like my weakness comes in, where I'm like, oh, is it or isn't it? And then that could be detrimental to me in the moment if I think I'm taking an entry that's valid. And then when someone's like, share your entries with me, and they're like, well, what's this just random entry? So it's just great practice to mark up anything that is your weakness.
Right. And that's actually something that I struggle with as well. And that one would be a bullish engulfing candle, the one that Amy was just indicating, not a Harami, because a Harami points in the other direction. It engulfs instead of to the left, it engulfs to the right. And so how Teresa describes it and how it's described in a number of different texts, I think as well, is that think of it as like a pregnant mother, right? Like her back is standing to the left and then her belly is to the right. And that's what Harami means in Japanese. So it's like a pregnant mama.
And I was so fixed on Haramis that I didn't even mark it up as an engulfing candle because I was only looking at it as a Harami. So there's room for improvement everywhere.
Yeah, it's something that like maybe you start and you're brand new, and included in this, you'd be marking up every EMA, and you'd be marking up, you know, all the different things that you're seeing. There's times Teresa has posted homework and she says, mark up everything you see on the chart. But like Amy just pointed out, once your eye goes to it and you no longer have to question, oh, is this the 13 EMA, or what is the 200? What does the gray mean? Then you no longer, like, now it's trained in your brain. You don't have to go looking for it. But any of the things that you need a little bit of practice on, it's really good to come through and just mark it up, and then later slide the chart over and then mark up some more, and then slide the chart over and mark up some more. And also sharing your homework in the groups is really beneficial. It helps you get out of your comfort zone, which is fantastic. And as a community, like, we're all here to help each other. So I think that it can help, like, when you step out of your comfort zone and you open yourself up to be a little bit vulnerable and have other people look at what you're doing, then you can release some of those feelings of shame or whatever you might have been feeling, because you realize, like, you made it bigger in your head than it actually was. I see a Harami on this chart, actually.
I did one. Did I miss more? Or it's further ahead still?
It's further ahead still. Yes, Cindy.
And I missed every
Harami and
single shift
Masters.
entry on this chart also.
Harami and Masters are the only ones that engulf to the right. Yes.
So did anybody in the chat actually mark up anything on their own trading view that you'd be willing to drop a link for, and then we can kind of go over as well?
I didn't get very far. I was talking a lot.
I forgot about that. And I was like, Leah's going to do it too. Also fill the silence because I can't talk and think at the same time.
That's okay. I know it's kind of fascinating, and you can learn a lot by watching too. So not everybody has done it. Not as you're doing it, but I'll do it. What's the call? That's fantastic.
And then just pointing out, most of you probably know Teresa does talk about this daily. When you're trying to figure out, like, is something engulfing, or is there a gap when things are really close, just to hover over the candles. And up here, it's going to give you the open, high, low, and close, as well as the point count for the candle that you're hovering over. So even as I'm asking you guys to do your homework, I'm still cheating. Like, I instantly see engulfing candles, and then I have to go back and be like, okay, like, what did I miss between my easy wins that I filled in, because I know that they're there.
I'll share. Oops, sorry, my dog wants to play and he doesn't realize I'm on a Zoom. One other thing that people ask me sometimes is, does an engulfing candle have to line up right next to another candle? And I think if you guys can see on here, there's quite a few examples where it doesn't, like right above 1320, the candle gaps down from the top, but is still an engulfing candle. So just to be aware that they don't have to be in alignment and engulf the candle prior to it. They just need to be bigger than, regardless of where that candle started. Or
are there any entries specifically? I know we said we go and look for, like, the inside and outside entries. Besides that, is there anything specific that you guys would like us to go and find to mark up for you?
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah, Brian.
So on setting your stop loss, from what I understand, only on a DeLorean do you not use the fractal lows or highs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So on a D-low, let's just find a really classic with the red answer or yeses. So this one is okay. The red's only cutting through one in a small corner. But say if we were looking at, oh, I already lost it. If we were looking at this as a D-low, oh gosh, that's intense. If we were looking at these two candles right here as a DeLorean entry, it's not a picture perfect entry, but we can see our fractal. Oh, this isn't a good example. Ideally, you want to have the aqua extremely close or cutting through, because you would like to be having the aqua. Anyone who follows like PK or Tyrone, and they always talk about like, is the aqua your friend? You want the aqua to be your friend, and you want your stop loss to be spread times 2 below the lowest point of your 2 candles, but you want the aqua to be in the mix so that the aqua is actually acting as additional point of resistance before your stop loss. So ideally, you'd always have your stop loss below the aqua as well, but we wouldn't take this as an OG D-low. So for spread times 2, though, if we pretend that just for this purpose that the aqua was up here and cutting through, we would look at these 2 candles and we're looking for the lowest point of those. So this one is 207.7 and this one is also 207.7. So they're identical. And even though we've got a fractal right over here, we are going to only use spread times 2 below. So my spread right now is 1.6. and 2.6. So global prime always fluctuates when you choose the highest spread. So 2.6 times 2 is going to be 5.2 points. So we're going to take our low of 207.5, and then we're going to go 5.2 points below that. So I don't have to embarrass myself. I'm going to bust out my calculator and go 207.7 minus 5.2. Oh, that didn't work. It's still embarrassing for myself.
While you work that out, I'll answer Yvonne's question. So Yvonne, DeLoreans can actually be found on any symbol with a chart on any time frame.
So we would have our stop loss at 34,202.5. Does that make sense, Brian? I know this is not the most ideal, but if our candle lows, pardon me, are 207.7, we're going to get spread times 2 and go spread times 2 lower than our lows.
Yeah, thank you. And then if there was a boss candle, then you would use a fractal low, correct?
Yeah, so say if we were taking this, because this entry would actually also trigger a master candle entry over here, because we've got the open of this candle is the exact same as the high of this candle. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 candles engulfed in this boss candle. And this candle here, when it pushed to 1 point above this high, so we've got a high of 215.7. When this candle hit 216.7, that would be your entry. And from your entry, you would want to look at the nearest fractal. So the boss or the master candle would actually be your fractal as well on this one. So you'd go spread times 2 below your fractal.
And some people don't really know how to identify fractals without the fractal indicator, but there's a simple trick that I use, and I've taught people this before. If you hold up your hand, a Williams fractal needs to have 5 candles, and it's the peak of the 5 candles in that pattern. So when you have your hand like this, your middle finger is always the fractal. So if it's up or down, think of it like 5 candles are like your hand, and then the peak of it, high or low, is the fractal.
And there is a fractals indicator as well. I don't know if I can add another one, but there is a Williams fractal. Yeah, I can't add one right now because I don't want to lose my settings on the ones that I have. But you can add a fractals indicator. And honestly, I didn't really understand what a fractal was until I added the indicator. And then it took almost no time at all to watch like when a new fractal would appear. For me, it was just visually as I could be like, okay, there's no fractal and now that's a fractal. What's the difference? And it was really just like the high or low of it had to be higher or lower than 2 candles behind it and 2 candles in front of it. So even as these candles were painting, this would not have been a fractal. Our fractal would have been back here until we got 2 more candles after this candle closed is when the fractal indicator would now show visible on this one because it has to have 2 candles after it as well as 2 candles before it.
And that's one of the benefits of doing homework also, is that you start to be able to predict what might happen. So you could see that candle paint and be like, okay, this is a new high or low. Even though it's not a fractal yet, technically, it could become the next fractal if more candles paint within that region and stay above that low. What is a yellow D-low? A yellow D-low is, well, even the last example would qualify as a yellow D-low, with the yellow cutting through both candles and the red closely below.
And the yellow D-low doesn't have any reference really to having the aqua gray or blue closely below or cutting through. It strictly is a yellow EMA cutting through one or both of your entries. So this, again, we don't have a lot of volume in the time frame that we're looking at. This is a 0-point candle, but if this candle was a little bit bigger, and then we can see we've got an engulfing candle, but because the yellow deal is coming through, this would normally just be a bearish engulfing, which is what I tagged it as, but it could actually be a yellow deal as well.
So if you happen to see one, I'm not really seeing one in your time frame, but Hannah says she's struggling with LL delos. And I know that that is one that was really tricky for me to get a grip on earlier on. Now I recognize them a little bit more, but hopefully we can show you one somewhere. And then also I wonder if we, in order to touch on some of the other points, maybe we should do some markups on an entry and then look for what would the exits be for that.
Excellent. I'll just go back to a random time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And LL delos, Anna, I think they don't get a lot of attention just because they're statistically not as likely to play out. It's easy in hindsight to be like, oh, what was the entry before a big run, and see like, oh, it actually was an LL. I don't think I've ever played an LL dealo myself. And the reason for that is, so here would be an example of an LL dealo. So we've got a bearish, I
Bullish.
still struggle with this, a bullish candle. And then we've got a smaller red candle beside it. We've got the red cutting through, the aqua cutting through, but the red candle isn't actually engulfing to make it a dealo. So on this candle close, you would play 20% of your risk. So if you were risking, like if your lot size based on your calculation was a 1.0, you would lower your lot size to be a 0.2. So you're really like, the fact that you're going to cut your lot size down by a fifth means you're not as sure in that play. But you would enter a fifth of your lot size, and then after the next candle completes the dealo or the engulfing of that candle, you would enter the other 80%. And an LL can play out in 2 candles, or it can also play out, we could have had another small candle that closed right here, and then had a third candle. That the third candle was engulfing, you wouldn't enter anything additional on the second candle. You would still wait until you fully engulfed the first candle before you played the other 80% of your lot size. But then you're also managing 2 trades for the same entry. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is that you then would need to be managing 2 trades for that entry.
Is that LL also not a bearish harami?
Yes,
It is.
it is also.
LLs and haramis look very similar and quite often are the same.
Yeah, and so it's almost, if you were looking at it like that, and if you do happen to notice that they're a harami, your entry would be better on the harami if you still like that play. So for this instance, we would be waiting, and then we've eaten up a lot of that profit with this big 20-point candle here. So you wouldn't be entering till closure here. But if you're entering this as a harami, you would find the low of this candle, which is 3483.7. And you would enter as soon as it broke one pass below that. So 3482.7, you would take your sell. And then all of these, probably like 12 points, would be profit for you as well, rather
and
than waiting down here and then kind of like riding it out.
I think what you want to see in a harami, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, is you want to see that bit of a gap towards whichever way you're going. So like when the second candle opens, it opened gapped below where, like, it didn't open exactly where the other candle closed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it would gap down for a sell.
Yeah,
Or if it was for a buy, it would
yeah,
gap
you want it to
up
gap up or down with the way you're
for a
going.
buy.
That makes the harami, well, people seem to like them better when they do that. Like that gap shows selling pressure, that it opened with a gap to the downside.
Yeah. And then these wicks are also nice too, right? Like we've got a
Yep.
wick saying it tried to go up, the AUK was holding, it closed back
Yeah.
down, the sellers came in, and then in the 1 second between this candle closing and this candle opening, more sellers came in that actually pushed price down so that they
Yeah.
didn't close level like these ones here did.
Yeah.
But it pushed price down with selling pressure.
And it looks like the third attempt to breach the aqua kind of. So there's a lot of nice, actually decent things about that. But
For myself personally, I'll talk about like if I didn't notice that as a harami, which I probably wouldn't have because that's what I still need to do more homework on. I personally, if I am going to consider an LL, I just wait for the completion of the engulfing. I don't mess around with 20% entries.
Not engulfing harami, sorry guys. So we'll just mark up these entries, and then if we want to follow this one through to completion, and then we can talk about what our exits would be on here as well. So we've got a couple entries that we can manage.
yeah, and since I've been using Janie to help more, it's harder to kind of separate your trades. Like you get one entry, right? So it's like, I don't really play LLs for that way either anymore.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think I've ever like taken the 20%. I'm with Leah where I'd wait for like full completion and then just enter my full lot size there. So exits, would anybody like to volunteer and unmute themselves to see how going through this candle by candle of what our exits would be? Nobody? I can walk through the first one. So we are in a cell. Does anybody want to drop in the exits that they know in the chat? Because we could, if we just take this
I can go
trade.
through it if you want, Amy, as long as I just slowly go through the. So which
For
one are you
sure.
entering? You're entering the bearish harami?
So either one of these, if we want to take either one, I think like we would have the same management, and we'll just like keep going of like what would our first exit be, keep going, what would our next exit be, and see like even if it's an exit that we would take or wouldn't take, we'll just keep going and try and like get through all of our exits that apply.
So the first exit would be the TDI shift.
So that would be an LC LC exit when we can see that the RSI down here on the TDI, it was in a downtrend and it came up and closed back up over the liquid 50. So that's an LC exit. That is considered a mandatory exit by Tyrone, who originally teaches that.
There's a VBC before that also. Yeah, Anna called the VBC.
Nice. So for anybody who doesn't know, I'll mark them up on here as well. So we can see on the TDI, it will kind of jump when you move slowly from candle to candle. So you can see like where exactly it was on each candle. So it has to physically close over the TDI. So this would be our LC exit on the TDI. And for a VBC exit is a volatility band collapse. And that is where the RSI, which is the green price line, comes outside of the Bollinger Bands and then comes back inside of the Bollinger Bands. And sometimes it's really hard to see. Like I will zoom right in. Oh, now I made my guy over here. I'll zoom right in to make sure that you're getting the right candle. So it would be 2 candles before our LC exit would be our VBC. And sometimes it looks even like it's closed right over top. So you can, as long as you've got your indicators list drop down here, it will also tell you your DeLorean TDI number. So you can go to the line that you're looking for and see my green line and my yellow line, and I'm going to compare their prices. So I can see my green is at 45.5 and my yellow is 45.74. So my green price is lower, which tells me it did cross down below. So that would be an exit if I was in any buys when price is now coming back down and shifting into sell mode on the TDI.
Yeah, so Anna
And
brings
just
up a
remember-
good point. Watching the numbers on the DeLorean TDI indicator to know that one is greater than or smaller than one of the other numbers. In this case, it's looking at the number of green price greater than the blue Bollinger Band at the bottom.
VBC. And sorry, what were you going to say, Mike?
No, I'm just going to say, make sure you've got to remember this is on Global Prime. All the other ones could be different. And then the other thing is make sure you're on the same time frame as Amy is too, right? The UTC 7. Because I was looking at the time and trying to find it on my screen, but my screen was on UTC 8. Just, just little things you have to remember. It's different when you're looking at it on your own screen, right? So you got to try to make it equal.
And this will kind of like play in down the road if we do a back testing one as well. But as you do more and more of these markups, sorry, just one second.
And this is all part of homework. So if you know that you struggle with identifying exits, taking this and marking up, okay, if you know entries really well, great, mark up an entry and then go through the process of all of the steps. If it was a shift entry, then there wouldn't be a fib on it. And so what would that look like to you then? How would you know what area you're targeting? And just go through all the steps and the things that we learn in the course, but also in Lisa's daily calls.
Agreed. And I just realized too, like if you took this, your fibs would be different. If you took this on the LL completion as well, you'd have much, much different fibs. But I was going to say, as you're marking these up, you can pay attention to, and it's not going to sink, it's just one of those things that you build on over time of starting to identify what's your most profitable exit. Because there's a lot of exits, and everybody's going to have their own exit that they like the best. So we can see in this instance, our VBC exit would have been more profitable. Off the Harami entry, we would have potentially, if we closed here, we would have secured just over TP1. If we took this on the LL though, then we probably wouldn't even have been at break even. So we would have taken potentially a small loss if you took the VBC exit.
Yeah, just on that, like what's the most profitable exit? You have to have a good eye for consolidation or not, because it'll change completely on what the market's doing, right? Like if you think one exit works all the time the best, that's not the case. It's not it won't work that way. That's why you have to kind of use all sorts of indicators. For instance, Teresa hit it on the call this morning, like, oh, there was a clue right on that BBC exit that the blood in the water wasn't even close. It was quite high off the Bollinger Band, right? So that's a clue that, okay, maybe that exit has more strength right now. I've found that as people trade more like Teresa and scalp more, you would take the earlier exits more and then just re-enter on the, if it shows it again coming back, right? Like she comes in and out more than waiting and hoping it. So she'll collect your points when she gets them. That's my opinion anyway. But I don't like, there isn't a like, oh, this exit always works. Like you'll find on the charts that like it will change, but Tyrone talked about it a lot. Like certain exits work better when the market's trending versus when it's consolidated. So you kind of have to have an eye for that.
Yeah. Thanks, John, for that. And just so everybody knows, like I was just like saying that this is something that you'll notice like over time as you're doing markups. Again, like I'm not saying that a VBC is more profitable, just in this specific instance. And also how like hindsight, it's easy to say like, oh yeah, I would have taken and this, or like, what wouldn't you have taken? But just like through time and learning yourself. And then also like a lot of times I find we don't take a ton of exits unless we are in consolidation, because we're either trailing our stop losses, so we're not worrying about exiting in profit, or we're taking like our mandatory LC exit if it's a consolidation area.
One of the things I like even looking at this is like, you know, if you're seeing some bearish candles and they're coming in and they're showing strength to the downside, and then at the bottom there where the price exited the Bollinger Band, you can look and see what is that candle telling me. And like Mike always says, every candle tells you a story. And to me, I'd be thinking, okay, this might now that it's exited the Bollinger Band, what might happen on the next candle? Well, this candle's telling me it's a little bit indecisive. It looks like it's run out of steam. It no longer has a lot of energy to push down much further. And then buyers are coming back in and holding price up. So in that case, if I was noticing it, I probably would have taken the VBC exit because I would have known if my trailing stop loss had not been hit yet. But I would have been given a clue by what the candle was doing that it just didn't have any more strength to continue.
Thanks, Leah. And then I think it was John who was saying like we would take our points, like typically when we're trading with Teresa, we take our points and look for a re-entry. So this here is also a master candle. So you could have had another re-entry if you did take that LC exit. And just keeping in mind, I'm reading Trading in the Zone right now and diving into the part about like probabilities and really believing. And so one of the things to be like, if you took this entry and then you got tagged out, and maybe you had a small amount of profit or not, like, or took a small loss on that one. But trading is really about like probabilities. We know what our edge is. Our edge is looking for master candle entries, and we're not necessarily like, we can't think on every single trade that we're always going to win, because we know that's just not the case. But we're looking for reasons to get in that our edge is supporting us, so we've got a higher probability. But then keeping in the back of your mind, right? So something I struggle with is re-entering, where I would say like, oh yeah, but it LC'd and it took me out. But I know that for me to be consistently profitable, I have to be taking my entries. I can't take one and be like, oh no, I took a loss on that one, I don't want to get back in, I'm too scared. My next entry has absolutely nothing to do with my last entry. So just really keeping that in mind. And then if you had taken your next entry, if you did decide to close, or if you did have your stop loss down on this one, if you had your stop loss move down into break even or a little bit of profit, you would have your re-entry opportunity either as a TDI shift entry on this candle, which you might have not wanted to. You might have wanted to wait to see if the master candle triggered. And then you could have had all these points coming all the way down to TP4 on the LL, or down to TP4 plus if you took the original entry. So just keeping that in mind. I know we're moving on to exits, but it's really important to still remember to, if you're taking small amounts, to get back in to take your next trade when it still gives you a signal that you like.
I like that too, because I think, I could be wrong. My eyeballs are telling me that's also a harami. So it's kind of like there's multiple entries on the one candle.
Good eye.
And the fact that it TDI shifted up, so it gave an LC on that first entry, but then it was like, nope, there's still too much strength down, so it immediately crossed back down. So it was a shift and unshift, but the EMAs failed to shift on that. And so there's 3 things that I like about this for re-entry. And like Amy's point, and also, you know, Teresa always says this, like, especially if you're trading counter trend. And I know that she's pointed out this is something that is one of my personal struggles, is like, okay, if I've taken my 2 losses or I've taken my 3 losses or whatever my trading plan says, like at some point you evolve to, yes, you want to follow your trading plan to a T, but you also can't let fear be the driver, or just like Amy said, you know, your next trade has nothing to do with your last trade. You're just looking at what the charts are telling you, trying to consider probability of success based on what you're being told. And so to me, this first one, yeah, it had enough steam to get down to the outside of the Bollinger Bands or volatility bands. They were quite pinched together at that time. And then price came up and pushed back through the liquid 50 and then back down with a little bit more strength. And I like that. Brian's asking, how many trades do we normally take per session to hit our daily goal?
Brian's just calling me out on all my weaknesses today.
So I'll tell you that the fewer trades I take, the more successful I usually am, or the more profitable I usually am. So today on my FTMO demo account, I took 2 trades. And I was very proud of that number, first of all, because I tend to, I still kind of mix things. But in my trading plan, I'm opening up for the possibility that I'd rather take small bites, just like what John said, take your points when you've got them. So I'm happy to take small bites and get little pieces rather than try to look for the big runners. Like if you had taken this next entry, whether it was master candle or harami, it basically would have been the same entry, or TDI shift would have been your first entry, but you'd probably wait for more confirmation first. If you had done that, this probably would have been a day ending trade in a single trade. There you go. Well past TP4. If you're trailing your stops all the way down, you probably could have got a really nice exit on that. The first exit that I see on the chart is again a VBC exit. And so, yeah, today I took 2 in my demo account and I took 2 in my live account, and I had a good day for both. But the typical answer is it can be a little bit more, and I'm trying to give myself grace to know that I've adjusted my trading plan to allow for the possibility of taking smaller bites. Amy, how about you?
Sis. So I have a tendency of over trading, and because one of my areas that I'm working on is like learning to trust my trades, because I'm very quick to move to break even, and then I'll get taken out of break even, and then the trade will go. So then I'm waiting for my next entry. So I typically have, I would say like 4 to 8, 4 to 10, depending on a couple of factors. Like, do I have break even trades? And if I do that, it's important for me also to make sure that I'm looking for what's my next re-entry point, so that I'm not just saying like, oh, well, there it goes, this happened again, right? I'm working to build that up. Like, okay, that happened. How would I have managed it differently? And we're going to get into that next week of like how to actually go back and mark up and analyze the trades that you took, to learn to trust yourself more. And then just to make sure that I'm also taking those reentries, as well as if you've taken a loss or two, even if you've taken a couple small losses, you can have more trades on that trading day as well if you're making up for that. And I'm also typically a lot more quick to protect after I've taken a loss. And then especially if I've taken 2 losses, because I know if I take one more stop loss, that's it, I'm done for the day. So I'll be even faster to protect. I'd rather have a break even than take another loss. So my numbers definitely differ, but I can also say, so I'm just in FTMO demo right now, but I think I had 2 trades this morning and I only risk 0.5% per trade on my FTMO. And I think I was up 0.3. And then I think I ended the day with 8 trades and I was down 0.5. So if I had have just taken my 2 trades and then stopped for the day, because it wasn't really like waiting for FOMC minutes to come out at noon, and there was a lot of consolidation this morning, and there's lots of reasons for me to not still be in the market. And so I'm working on that as well, because I'll recognize like, oh, like nothing's really happening. But if I don't physically shut down my trading view, walk away, close my MT5, I'll sit there. And then when you're sitting there, you start convincing yourself that you're seeing things that look better than they actually do. So I would have been better off today if I had have just stopped with my 2 trades, than spending another hour and a half on the charts and then ending up down for the day. Minimally down, but it's still like something that I've now got to make up in my FTMO at some point over the next 2 weeks as well. So today was my first day on a new FTMO challenge.
So I like that you
Brian,
marked
just to-
this. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Brian, just to answer your question, I think the more trades you take during the day, the more emotions plays in. I think Amy would agree with that.
Definitely,
You
yeah.
got, especially if you got a red one, like you say, then you take a small win, and then it can go farther. Well, that's where you got to use the tools we have. I see they have it turned off, but they have the 2 SMW, the purple channel that Teresa talks about is a good one to follow too, right? If it, try to relax if it's with the trend. There's lots of different things, but it's definitely a mindset thing. And as you take more trades, your mind starts to fool with you. And one of the biggest things I learned in just the last 2 months, say, and I've been trading for say 32 months. The last thing, the biggest thing I learned is the less trades I take, the more I make, right? And if I take 1 trade and I make my percentage, I turn my phone off and I'll do a little work on the charts, but I try to get away from the trading and take a break from it, right? So that's very important.
Yeah, totally agree and can relate to that. It's definitely, you need to be checking with yourself emotionally. And Brian's like, the more trades I take, the tighter I trail my stop loss. That is my tendency. And that's one of my weaknesses, where I'm still linking a loss from a previous trade and thinking that it's a high probability of it happening again. Even though like I'm going in with my risk is predefined, like I'm not risking more than 0.5% per my trade. I can say that I know that it's 50-50. I've got my edge, which is like my master candle entry, that's working in my favor for me. That's why I'm confident to enter the trade. But it's still a struggle for me. So I shouldn't be trailing my stops tighter unless the market is showing me, right? Like if the candle is showing me something that says, hey, like, you know what? Like if I'm in a buy right here, I take this engulfing candle right here, and then I see price pushes all the way up past the aqua, and I'm like, woohoo, yeah, close above the aqua. This is going to be great. And then it wicks back down. That to me is not going to make me be confident about my trade. The market's showing me like, hey, maybe a price doesn't want to. So maybe in that instance, I might have a reason to get to break even a little bit sooner. And we can see that it still did go up in our favor, but still just paying attention to what is each candle showing you and making sure that your emotions are in check, that you're not being ruled by your emotions.
I think another good point, and Amy and I talked about this yesterday because we trade together every day, is that like, are you actually okay with the trade that you took and are you okay with risking what you're risking? So if you don't really feel comfortable risking 2%, then maybe you need to look at for you what number is a little bit more comfortable for you. Maybe it's 1% or maybe it's 0.5%. Can I just share one little quick thing? Actually, Amy, because you drew this short position box, can you also draw if it went to TP4 and then another one if it went, if you were trailing your stops down, what the different risk to reward would be for each scenario?
Yeah,
think-
for sure.
Really good for people to see.
So if you were trailing spread times 2 above the yellow, how Teresa, so 19, that put us at about 23.
I think it probably would have gone lower though, because
Oh, that would have been about the same.
that big candle down past TP4. So what's this? This is to TP4, so it's a 1 to 2.
And then you would have been taken out on the pullback
Yeah.
on this peak candle. And then you
Like-
wanted one more with,
Just if you could have trailed right to the bottom, like if you would have been really trailing closely, maybe you're trailing by 2 points or 5 points or whatever, once it passed TP4.
and another thing to watch for too, like as we were trailing down, we can see prices approaching the 30. So that might be another indicator for you too, right? That you would want to trail a little bit tighter. So if you took that and then we'll say price came down to, what is that, 94? So say if you started trailing by 10, you would have been at 04. And so that would be a 1 to 2.3 if you started trailing by 10 when price hit the 30. It would be a 1 to 2 if you were, what was this one for, Leah?
TP4.
TP4. Oh yeah, if you just move your stop to TP4 when price pushed back, and then if you'd waited for an actual exit, so if you took the VBC exit, it would have been a 1 to 1.4.
And for me
So-
in my trading plan, one of my things is like, if I get a TP4, like I will set a take profit. I'm very, very happy if I get a full TP4 trade. I do trail also, but I'm very happy if it goes to like the very end. And that's just for my own personal.
And I think just really getting to know yourself, you'll get to know what you're more comfortable with. So one of the things that Lee and I were talking about this week is about setting TPs. So typically with Teresa, we don't set TPs. We always are trailing so that way we're giving it the opportunity to keep going. And then if it pulls back, we've still secured an amount that we're happy with. So that's why everybody trails by different amounts. The amount that people are willing to give up is different for everybody. For myself, I really like the feeling of hitting a take profit because that's setting my expectation. So, and this is just like a mental thing for myself. Mentally and emotionally, I process it better being like, I expected to hit TP3. If I set a TP at TP3, and I just threw that number out, but we'll say like here we can see we've got, if I took the first entrance, like TP4 on our first entry is right at previous lows. So if I set my TP at TP4 and it hit that, I would be 100% okay with that because that was my expectation for it to hit TP4. If it came to TP4 and then I'm trailing, and even though it comes back and I'm like, thank you, trailing stop loss, you take me out in profit. For me, it's still a different emotional journey of having the expectation and then hitting that, as opposed to being like, oh, I hope it keeps going. I hope it keeps going. And then, oh, it pulled back and I actually gave up 20 points or 25 points, or I gave up half my profit. So just learning to know yourself and what like that will help you to define what kind of trader you want to be. And I see also we're at 7:15 right here. So great
Yeah,
conversations.
we're a little bit
Hopefully.
over. And thank you guys for spending some time with us. So we didn't really get to identifying divergence, but maybe we'll talk about that next week when we are doing objective markups of real trades. And thank you guys for your time. I hope this has been beneficial to you. And we'll really look forward to any feedback that you guys can share on the group chats or whatever, and hope that you'll join us again next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night and enjoy your day of not trading. Maybe tomorrow, if you still want to spend some time on the charts, you could come in and do the homework. What is something that you're really trying to go yourself on and spend that extra hour on the charts marking up homework instead of our trading call with Teresa.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on Friday for a workshop.
Yes, yes. Bye, guys.
Have a great night.
Thanks, ladies. Have a great night.